Remastered in live action.
"Tell me more about Tall Human Stan," says Craig. "Why did you have to leave?" "It's terrible," says Ankler. "The king, he exiled us." "Really? But I thought Tall Human Stan was a democracy." "There was a revolution," says Ankler. "A revolution? To establish a monarchy? How strange." "Yeah, it was a rough time," says Tyrese. "Many of our people were purged by the government during the chaos. We almost found ourselves executed, but we managed to sneak out of the capital city." "Ah, how grievous this news is," says Craig. "To think such a strong and free nation could be laid low in such a manner. It makes me want to weep. Come, friends, sing the Tall Human Stan national anthem with me. It will raise our spirits to remember the way things were." Says Tyrese. "We can't. The king outlawed singing the national anthem." "But you are not in Tall Human Stan territory now, friends. You can sing freely." "We forgot how to sing it," says Wiggles. "It's been a long time." "What a tragedy. Luckily, I remember it. I will sing it to you in honor of the memory of the Tall Human Stan that once was." Craig stands up and begins to sing. "Tall Human Stan, I pledge my heart to thee, for brother and sister in our glorious tall human democracy, from one landmark to another, and the shores of all our bodies of water, long live beautiful Tall Human Stan." He finishes, sits down, and says, "Well, that's the first verse anyway. To be honest, I forgot all the rest. What a shame." At this moment, another bear bursts into the village center with a newspaper clutched in one hand. In bold letters on the front page are, "Tall Human Party sweeps Tall Human Stan national elections." "Look, guys, the Tall Human Party won the election," says the bear. Craig turns to the three Norn with a confused look in his eyes. "I thought you said the Republic had been overthrown," he says. You can't trust the media these days," stumbles Ankler. "You know, they're under the government's thumb." Craig nods his head, but then he looks at the newspaper and notices the name of the news outlet above the headline. "Tall Human Stan Free Press. No government interference here." He turns back to the Norn with eyebrows raised. They stare back at him, finally at a loss as to how to spin this. They find Captain Shire lying there, biting on his pillow in agony. Stroller immediately runs up to him and exclaims, "What happened to this man? What did you do?" Thinking quickly, Lindenrow says, "He stole the horses from us." Stroller turns towards them and says, "I thought you left the horses behind." "No, he stole them." "Then where are they now?" "They burned to death." "How?" "Spontaneous combustion." "And how did this guy get burned?" "The horse kicked him." "It kicked him?" "Yeah, while it was on fire, it kicked him." "So you're telling me that this man just came up to you and tried to steal your horses, then the horses lit on fire suddenly and kicked him, causing him to get extreme burns across half his body, and then you carried him all the way to this inn for some reason?" "Yep, that sounds about right."
The elder Jews foretold of their return.
The Dark Lord has returned. It will take a band of amazing heroes to stop him. They are the Fellowship of the Cabbage. But beware, the Dark Lord Ubadu. Remastered in live action. Coming soon. It was that Poobadoo was defeated. However, it came at a great cost.
You should have acted. They're already here. The elder Jews foretold of their return. Their defeat was merely delay. In the time after Poobadoo's fall, when the sons of Jupskalon would spill their own blood, but no one wanted to believe they even existed. But when the truth finally dawned, it dawned in Ice Brood. But there is one they fear. In their tongue he is Golden Jew, Elder Jew. The mists. The armies of Leon have long held out the evils which lurk within. It only took one small incursion to unleash it all. During the time of Mini-Dredge, a necromancer by the name of Mercurdo Durka was taken hostage by these evils. After killing his best friend, he disappeared into the mists and has been missing for 200 years. He is back, and more powerful than ever. But there is a power far greater than his own. The only ones who can stop him are the combined forces of the Mongols, an ancient tribe of lettuces from the Triangle Lands, and the ancient House of Jews. These powers, combined, may just be enough to take on the ancient evil.
But there's one they fear. In their tongue, he's but Dragonborn.
Defilers, poisoners, we see. We know your foul intent. What can I do for you?
Well, you can tell by the way I use my walk. I'm a woman's man, no time to talk. The music loud, women walk, being kicked around since I was born. Never tolerate, I don't hate, and you may look the other way, but we can try to understand and do your time to make not man. Whether you're a brother or whether you're a mother, you're staying alive, staying alive. Feel the city breaking and everybody shaking, and you're staying alive, staying alive. Staying alive, staying alive. Staying alive.
Hey, hey, hey!
Space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the starship Enterprise. Its 5-year mission: to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life and new civilizations, to boldly go where no man has gone before.
Well, you can tell by the way I use my walk. I'm a woman's man, no time to talk. The music loud, women walk, being kicked around since I was born. Never tolerate, I don't hate, and you may look the other way, but we can try to understand and do your time to make not man. Whether you're a brother or whether you're a mother, you're staying alive, staying alive. Feel the city breaking and everybody shaking, and you're staying alive, staying alive.
Dark days.
Later that day, after they have finished their meal, they head down to the local prison. To their mild surprise, there are only 2 guards in the whole place. "Hello," says one. "The name's Barry. This is Twig." He gestures to the other guard. "What can we do for you today?" "We'd like to see the prisoners," says Slayer 1. "All righty, come along then. We'll take you to them. It's nice to see a civilian take an interest in these poor souls. They really do need the company. Helps their rehabilitation." "Rehabilitation?" says Slayer 1 as they make their way to the cells. "Oh yes," says Twig. "We're all about rehabilitation here. In our culture, we believe that criminals generally just need a helping hand to get back on their feet. Most of them just made a wrong choice in life. Going out of our way to punish them would only make them worse. We try to be understanding and helpful so that they can be reintegrated into society after their release." Slayer 1 barely manages to contain his disgust. Eventually, they get to the main cell block, a surprisingly homey place with happy-looking paint on the walls and bright lighting. Every cell has a comfortable bed and a private bathroom, as well as various books and other recreational items. Most of the cells are empty. Those that aren't are mostly occupied by trolls, but there is one human there, a bald, wild-eyed fellow with a long gray beard. As soon as they enter the room, he yells, "New meat, eh? Why don't you get in here and see how nice prison is, you little twinks?" "That's Edgar," says Barry. "He is our most troubled prisoner. We've been trying to help him for 20 years now, but no matter how nice we are, he just gets more angry. I fear we may not have the skills to help him as much as he needs, but that won't stop us from trying." "Get in here, Barry, you fat bastard, and I'll show you trouble. I'll fucking shank you, you bitch." Months pass and the Frog War comes to an end. All frog armies are defeated by the combined Allied forces. Their capital is put to the torch, and the remaining frogs flee back to their ancestral subterranean home. Most of their technology is destroyed in the fighting. After the war, Gyubi and Zana once more say goodbye to their friends and embark on a new mission to the newly liberated Isle of the Jubites to reveal the true nature of the Jubes to them. Pogo Fruge relapses into alcoholism. The Marslims and Martians migrate to the Ul'dah Desert and establish the city of New Mars there, with Hilal and Matt as co-rulers. Marty and Francis go back to being mercenaries for hire, joined by Little Elf, Tiki God, and Pogo Fruge, when they can get him sober. In the months after the war, their business booms and they're finally able to afford a new base of operations. Francis finalizes the purchase and heads over to Blubby's bar to tell Marty. He finds his friend talking to Blubby Dubby while Gene plays with Moondog nearby and Pogo Fruge lies on the ground in a drunken stupor. "Hey, Marty, we can finally move into our new house." "It's a headquarters, Frank," insists Marty. Francis looks down at the paperwork that clearly says house, but decides not to make it into an argument. "Well, whatever it is, let's go see it." Marty, Francis, Gene, and Moondog head for the exit. "Can I come see?" says Blubby. Well, it's gonna be pretty empty. How about you come over another time?" says Marty. Blubby goes back to cleaning the bar as they head over to their new house. Francis opens the door and steps in. Tiki God is already there, sitting on the shelf silently. "Well," says Francis, "I'm home." "Headquarters," says Marty. The camera pans out through the door and ascends through the air, passing through the clouds and out of the atmosphere. It continues to pan past the moon, where Greg's frozen corpse and Fate's razor float through the void surrounded by debris. On it goes, past Mars and through the quickly cooling asteroid field that used to be Io, on and on until finally reaching the Oort cloud, where it zooms in on a small asteroid. On the asteroid stands a lone gibbon, a telescope to his eye pointed towards Earth. He lowers it and nods his head once. "Look," he says in a way that translates to, "Godspeed, Earth, Finn." "Here's another life lesson, Tubi," says Lyndon Rowe. "Know your worth and don't let the government take your labor for free. I think we've entertained this asshole's delusions of control for long enough." As they enter, Elrond is saying, "First, so that all may understand what is the peril, the tale of the ring shall be told from the beginning, even, oh, hello, Bilbo, you're late. Sorry, Elrond, I was—" Isengriff and Lindenrow burst onto the scene at this point, leading Elrond to exclaim, "Bilbo, you fool, you've led them right to us." "Hey," says Isengriff, "were you having the council without us? What gives?" "You were never invited," says Elrond, "so I would appreciate it if you were to leave. Nah, we're staying. This is an important council and we want to get the scoop on our plans. Gandalf the wizard stands up suddenly, yelling, "Silence! You are not part of our plans, you fools! We have no need of your presence, and you have done nothing but bother the good people of Rivendell since you arrived. Were it not for Lord Elrond's charity, you would have been driven out the hour you arrived." Isengriff and Lindenrow laugh merrily at this. "Oh, Gandhi," says Lindenrow, "you always were a joker." "I am not joking. Ha ha ha, good one." They sit down in 2 empty chairs, ignoring Gandalf's further imprecations against them. Elrond sighs resignedly and tells Gandalf, "Just let them stay. We don't have time for this sort of stupidity, and I highly doubt they are servants of the enemy. That one is an elf, for one thing." Gandalf sits down with a huff. "As I was saying," continues Elrond, "we must now hear the tale of the ring." He continues on in this manner, but Isengriff and Lindenrow stop listening because they are too busy raising their hands to try and get Elrond's attention. He ignores them and continues telling his tale, from the creation of the One Ring, the War of the Last Alliance, and so forth. Finally, Isengriff says, "Elrond." "What is it?" Elrond says angrily. "What ring are we talking about?" "I was just explaining that. Weren't you listening?" "No. The One Ring is a powerful artifact created by Sauron, and now we have it. Are you satisfied?" "More or less." "Good. Now go back to not listening while I finish my story." He continues on for a time, telling of Isildur's death and of the realm of Gondor. Once he has finished speaking, Boromir gets up and says, "Give me leave, Master Elrond, first to say more of Gondor, for verily "Oh boy," says Isengriff. "Here we go again." "Yeah," replies Lindenrow. "All you ever talk about is Gondor this, Gondor that. I thought we were talking about a ring." "Well, never mind then." "Now at this last we must take a hard road, a road unforeseen," says Elrond. "There lies our hope, if hope it be, to walk into peril to Mordor. We must send the ring to the fire." "Why do you speak of hiding and destroying?" says Boromir, standing once again. "Why should we not think that the great ring has come into our hands to serve us in the very hour of need? Wielding it, the free lords of the free may surely defeat the enemy." "Yeah," says Isengriff, standing as well. "Why are you guys such pussies? We don't need to destroy some ring to beat Sauron. Let's just go to fucking Mordor and rip his head off." "One does not simply walk into Mordor," says Boromir gravely. "Pfft, I bet we could manage it. You guys can come with us if you want." "We are not going to rip Sauron's head off," says Elrond. "Nor can we wield the ring as a weapon. It is evil, and it answers to Sauron's will alone. It must be destroyed." "Okay, well, we can workshop it later," says Lindenrow. The rest of the council argues a bit, but eventually agrees with the destroying the ring bit. The hobbit named Frodo agrees to be the ring-bearer, and a call is sent out for those who may want to join him on his quest. Aragorn, Gimli, Boromir, Gandalf, and the other 3 hobbits, Merry, Samwise, and Pippin, all agree to join. "So be it," says Elrond as he looks at the 9 of them gathered together. "You shall be the Fellowship of Cabbage," yells Isengriff as he and Lindenrow run up to join the group. Elrond sighs in frustration. Late that night, in the Hall of Flames, the real members of the Fellowship get together around the fire to discuss the situation. "We need to get rid of those 2, says Gandalf sternly. "I agree," says Aragorn, "but what should we do? We can't very well kill them, and they seem determined to follow us no matter how obvious we make it that they aren't welcome." "Indeed, luckily I think I have an idea that just might work." He explains the plan to them, and everyone agrees that it is a sound one. "There is one problem, though," says Frodo. "We'll need 2 of us to volunteer to spend time around them for an extended period of time. How do we decide who must take up this burden?" "There is only one fair way," replies Gandalf. "We will draw straws." He takes 8 straws of various lengths out of his pockets and has each person draw one. Once it is done, everyone reveals their straws. Gimli and Legolas have the shortest, meaning they are stuck wet. They both groan in disappointment but agree to do what must be done.
Well, you can tell by the way I use my walk. I'm a woman's man, no time to talk. Music loud, women walk, being kicked around since I was born. Never tolerate, that's okay. And you may look the other way, but we can try to understand. The New York Times are big on man. Whether you're a brother away, whether you're a mother, you're staying alive, staying alive. Feel the city breaking and everybody shaking, and we're staying alive, staying alive. Staying alive, staying alive. Staying alive. Right now I get low when I get high, and if I can't get in, I really try. Got the wings of heaven on my shoes, I'm a dancing man, and I just can't lose. Now it's alright, it's okay. I live to see another day, but we can try to understand. The New York Times are big on man. Whether you're a brother away, whether you're a mother, you're staying alive, staying alive. Feel the city breaking and everybody shaking, and we're staying alive, staying alive. Staying alive, staying alive. Staying alive.
Hey do, merry do, my hearty.
Yeah, you know.
Old Tom Bombadil is a merry fellow. Bright blue his jacket is, and his boots are yellow. To enter his domain means death. If he sees you, run, and don't look back. Hey do, merry do, my hearty.
greater even than the seventh umbral calamity, must be undone. Become what you must.
Hey everyone, welcome to another video. Today we're looking at the Cabbage Saga Iceberg. Been really hoping someone would make an iceberg of this, so I actually saw this on the R Cabbage Saga subreddit today, posted by you, Eisengriff. He's a pretty big member of the community. If you haven't heard of him, you really should have. Let's actually just go and just jump right in. I'm really excited to look at this. So on the first layer we have Poobaloo looking really nice and looking pretty young and fresh. You know, classic old-timey photo of Poobaloo. So first up we have Marty's Mercs. Marty's Mercs, of course, everyone knows. You got Marty Mutton Chops, Francis Francu, Blubby Dubby, Gene, Way and Daring. Those are some classic characters from Aldenard, and they're really kind of the main characters that we see the continent of Aldenard through. Up next we have Lyon. Lyon is a very important city. Hasn't come up in the story in kind of a little while, but its importance to the lore is still definitely there. This is where the Quaggan Council resided for a long time before the battle of basically every army. And that's where a lot of major lore points and major plot points happened at Lyon. Next up we have the best-selling book series. Obviously, really the only two things that have outsold the Cabbage Saga are the Bible and the Lord of the Rings. That actually leads us into Lord of the Rings ripoff. As you, I'm sure, are aware, everything is ripping off the Lord of the Rings. That's really the only original work. Everything is kind of just derivative of it. But, you know, the writers of the Cabbage Saga acknowledge that, and they know that, and they've actually worked it into the lore, and it's really, really well done. It actually leads into pathos here. Now, the whole series is just full of pathos. Everyone knows about the pathos. It's one of the main reasons it sells so well is because of the pathos. This series is practically oozing with pathos. Next up, we have the breaking of the world. As you are, I'm sure, are aware, since we're still pretty early on in this iceberg, the world of the Cabbage Saga and our world are actually the same world. Most of the events of the Cabbage Saga actually just take place after what is known as the breaking of the world during the Jube-Muslim War. So moving on, we have Jubes. Those are the vile little creatures that pop up in pretty much every single story. They are one of the driving forces of the world, and they are quite horrific and disgusting. Next up, we have Colin. Colin is obviously the son of Tolkien and one of the major influences in the world of the Cabbage Saga. Pretty much any ancient weapon you come across is going to be made by Allah himself, and there are many servants of Allah like Rand al'Thor Dragon. Next we have Islam is true. In the world of the Cabbage Saga, Islam is actually a true religion. Allah exists, although he is not the one true God. That is one thing that they did not get right. But pretty much everything else in like the Quran and all that is correct. Lastly, on this level, we have Eisengriff and Lindenrow. This is really the duo that started it all. Everyone knows who they are. You can go down the street, ask anybody, hey, have you ever heard of Eisengriff and Lindenrow? And they look at you like weirdly as if, of course I know who they are. Who doesn't know who Eisengriff and Lindenrow are? And that's it for the first layer. Let's go ahead and move on to the next layer. Alright, the next layer, we have Poobaloo looking quite dark and getting a little bit more risque, I guess you could say. So let's go ahead and start off here with the Tales of Shinto Abe. Obviously, Shinto Abe is a very influential character in this series. This is his premiere series. It follows his life and his adventures. Lots of really good moments from that one. I would highly recommend reading that if you have not. Got some of my favorite characters like Monkey in it. Monkey is he was the best of us, really. Moving on, we have primordial oozes. Primordial oozes are an important part of the lore. The two main primordial oozes we know about are, of course, Isengriff and Lindenrow, and their companion Twiggle, who doesn't make a lot of appearance but is also an ooze. Now, what Twiggle's up to, we don't really know, and that's one of the greatest mysteries in the lore. It's one of those really fun things to kind of dive into. We have Cantha wins here. So Cantha, as you I'm sure are aware, is a very powerful nation state and faction in the Cabbage Saga world. During the later parts of the more fantasy sections, they actually kill the sun, kicking off the events of Cabbage Saga sci-fi and creating a galactic empire. Cantha is kind of one of those factions that's just so powerful that they will pretty much win anything that they're involved in. One of the more recent examples in the text is, of course, the Ooze Awakens with their invasion of Tyria. That was really only stopped because of Isengriff and Lindenrow. Next up, we have Pubidu. Pubidu is, of course, the original antagonist of the series. He was in the first Lord of the Quaggins trilogy as the main antagonist. Kind of a big influence on the series as a whole. And of course, they did also write the Chronicles of Pubidu, really detailing his rise to power. Up next, we have Tom Bombadil's Evil. Now, Tom Bombadil is Tolkien's first son. Tom Bombadil was upset because Tolkien did not allow him to really create anything he wanted. So Tom Bombadil created the Bombadilians and kind of corrupted everything, and is one of the main evil forces in the entire series. His influence is really felt all over. So next we have the Prophecy of Slayer. Slayer is, of course, the main character of Slayer's Awakening. Now that's a bit of a more uncomfortable read. It asks a lot of hard questions. You kind of have to look within yourself and realize that, hey, maybe this world isn't as great as we think it is. Slayer is two beings in one kind of. Slayer is a very strange being, but there's actually a prophecy about Slayer and how Slayer will bring about the end of the world. And of course, that is what Slayer 1 and Slayer 2 are trying to bring about during the events of Slayer's Awakening. Up next, we have God Emperor Donald Trump. God Emperor Donald Trump, of course, during the sci-fi era of Cabbage Saga, was one of the galactic rulers and a major player in galactic politics. Now, not a whole lot is known about God Emperor Donald Trump. He's kind of a bit of a mystery figure in the lore. All we really know for sure is that he is extremely powerful, and he kind of has the final say on any policy in his empire. We have Tolkien up next. Now, Tolkien is, of course, the one true god of the Cabbage Saga. He wrote the Lord of the Rings, and in doing so, created the world. Once again, Lord of the Rings ripoff. Everything's a ripoff. And when I say everything, I really mean it. I mean, your life is a ripoff of the Lord of the Rings, and it's all due to Tolkien. Middle-earth being real, that all ties back into Tolkien writing Lord of the Rings. Of course, Middle-earth is real. That's where our world comes from in this lore, and everything that happens in Middle-earth really did happen. Now, Cube is a classic villain from Legend of Mount Dimlock. Daeth Gudo and Jubi Dooby end up fighting and defeating the Cube. And he is kind of a mystery figure in the lore as well. We don't know a whole lot about Cube. All we know is that he is very powerful. Alright, let's go ahead and move on to the next level here. Alright, we're at Layer 3. We have a Jube Ham, Jube Kaida. Love this image. It's one of my favorites. And we're going to start off with Marty is gay. Marty Muttonchops of Marty's Mercs is actually homosexual. Now, this is something that's subtly referenced in the text, but it is very obvious when you're looking for the signs. And he actually in the fairy kingdom in the Undernard is confronted with this and he rejects it. Now, I personally think that it'd be good for him to really embrace it and kind of move on. Seems like Gary Goatee might have a bit of a crush on him, but we're not entirely sure on that front. And I think they'd actually make a pretty good couple if they were to get together. Let's go ahead and move on though to Aktasha. Aktasha is of course an extra dimensional space, kind of connects a lot of different areas of the galaxy together, and you know it's kind of another mystery point in the lore. We don't know a whole lot about it. I'm sure in the next Elder Scrolls Online story that we get, they will expand on that, particularly in the Wormy plotline that they're planning. We're not entirely sure what that's going to be like, but it will likely have something to do with Aktasha. Aktasha is very important for faster than light travel during the sci-fi era, and you know it's something that we'll definitely hear a lot more about when we get to Wormy. Let's go on to Muslim Mars colonies. During the Jube-Muslim War, and actually a little bit after the Jube-Muslim War, the Muslim community was actually sending out spaceships to Mars to colonize in the wake of all of that destruction. We actually go to one of the Mars colonies in Fate of the Frogs. Marty and Francis end up there, and they actually make contact, and we learn quite a bit about what has happened to them during those thousands of years between the Jube-Muslim War and the events of Fate of the Frogs. Moving on, we have Purgatory. Pretty much anyone who dies in the Cabbage Saga ends up in Purgatory. Purgatory is a really, really large area. It kind of exists outside of space and time and is run by Spookmaster. The amount of cultures and people and lands that are in Purgatory are kind of unknown to us. It's such a large area that we really only scratched the surface in the stories. Up next we have the Undernard. The Undernard is of course the area where Journey to the Center of Aldernard takes place. Marty and Francis end up there after the events of Kingdom of the Crystal Cube. Spydron acts almost kind of like a fake sun, keeping things alive down there. They meet Thickman. There's a whole bunch of civilizations. It's kind of like another entire world underneath the ground of the Aldernard. But unfortunately, it is destroyed completely during the events of Journey to the Center of Aldernard. So whether we'll go back to the Undernard, I really can't say for sure, but there is quite a lot of lore there to kind of dig deeper into at some point. The Glorious Frog Empire. Now this is actually during Fate of the Frogs. We have the Glorious Frog Empire front and center, obviously run by Frogs Pierre, and kind of run a bit from the shadows by Greg. Their downfall takes place during that story, and they're kind of relegated back to living underground like they originally did. Alright, Amir killed Stephen Hawking too. During the events of Prince of Flames, Amir actually ends up killing what is believed in the community to be Stephen Hawking too. It's kind of a tragic tale. I would definitely recommend giving Prince of Flames a read if you're interested in anything like that. Now we have the world-spanning underground hippie drug ring. Now, in a lot of stories, the hippies actually make an appearance, and there's usually an arc or a plot surrounding them. Now, this is actually the same group of hippies in every single story. They have an underground network of tunnels leading to all major civilizations where they can operate and sell their drugs. Next up, we have Clown Ninjas. During Straight Outta Holbrack, there's the Clown College introduction. Now, there's a lot of different types of clowns, like just your basic party clowns, balloon clowns, mimes, but then you also have the Clown Ninjas. Now, the Clown Ninjas are an elite group of clowns that are very stealthy and very deadly. So, if you come across a Clown Ninja, I would definitely recommend trying to get away, although, honestly, if you run into one of them and they're mad at you, you're probably not going to make it out anyway. And lastly, on this section, we have the Void. The Void is the space between universes. Yes, the Cabbage Saga is a multi-universe story, a multiverse, if you will. And the void is an area that kind of exists between these different universes. A lot of people are able to see the void, but not many are able to go in. There is a vessel that can actually traverse the void, and we'll actually touch on that a little bit later here. Let's go ahead and move on to the next level. Alright, we're on to the next layer here. Looks like we have Death Gudo right here and Juby Dooby looking pretty upset about something. This is definitely a sign that things are getting a little bit deeper. So, first of all, we have the Burger Kingdom. Now, Burger Kingdom is a region within Purgatory, run by what sounds like Burger King, you know, the fast food chain, and that is confirmed. It's a pretty fucked up place. They've got a lot of dead giants, essentially, that they've carved up to make their burger meat, their Whopper meat. It's actually, the giants were called the Whoppers, and it's kind of debated within the community if they named them the Whoppers or if they named the Whopper after the giants. Moving on, we have the Fallow High Genocide. Sounds like during the events of the Fellowship of Cabbage is when the Fallow High Genocide truly began. We see the beginnings of it with Romalda and Halbo. Now, we have yet to see the full resolution of the Fallow High Genocide, but we do know how it starts, and we know that it's mainly perpetrated by Mayor Will Whitfoot, or rather Supreme Overlord Will Whitfoot, and Assistant Fallowhide themselves, which of course Assistant Fallowhide is a Bombadilian, leading back up here to Tom Bombadil being evil. He's kind of the main driving force of that series if you really stop and think about it. You think it would be Sauron, because you know that's kind of Isengriff and Lindenro's whole plot, but it's really all about Tom Bombadil. Now, back down here, the moon is sentient. There have been many instances within the series that kind of hint towards the moon being a sentient being. And that's really all I have to say on that one. Next up, we have Allah killed the dinosaurs. During the events of Cabbage Hunters, Lindenrow actually fought the evolution beast. After seeing the immense pain and suffering that beast was causing itself due to its nature of constantly changing and evolving, Allah really kind of decided that it was probably not a good idea to continue to let dinosaurs evolve, so he decided to kind of nuke everything and just kind of hit a reset button on the ecosystem of the Earth. Various jupe forms. Now, throughout the series, we've actually seen plenty of jupes, but we've also seen different jupe types, such as jupe blobs or boob jupes, to name two of the more well-known types. So jupes come in many different forms, and some are more powerful than others. Up next, we have the Blood Lakes. Now, in Purgatory, there's actually a couple of different Blood Lakes. The first one we see is actually in Colin's Inferno, when Isengriff and Lindenrow come across one. But a more recent example is when we actually came across a Blood Lake in Journey to Valhalla. Shinto Abe and the Gimp met Mog the Frog, who is actually creating his own Blood Lake. Up next, we have Obama's Taint. A lot of people are familiar with the Norn disease. Now, that's actually just part of Obama's Taint. You see, a long time before Straight Outta Holbrack, during the events of the story about Obama specifically, Obama actually curses the Norn with the Norn disease, and the dwarves with turning them to stone. It's known as Obama's Counterstroke or Obama's Taint. Up next, Greg did nothing wrong. So a lot of people are upset with Greg, with good reason, I'd say, for the most part. He's not the nicest person. However, if you really think about it, the whole world has kind of been kicking Greg while he's down since his conception. Being the son of Juby Dooby doesn't really lend itself to being mentally stable or having a good childhood at all. And he kind of just grew to resent the world, and, you know, he eventually became a hate revenant. But, you know, when you really think about it, Greg probably wouldn't have done any of that if it wasn't pretty much the entire world against him at any given moment. Up next, we have 27 Pecan Joe's Eternal Torment. So during the end of Clash of the Clans, Pecan Joe is consumed by a slub and shit out. Now, his consciousness is actually still within that piece of shit, and that piece of shit is floating through the cosmos and the void for all eternity, effectively making Pecan Joe one of the most tormented souls in the entire series. Lastly, we have Ronel Dragon Apocalypse Cult. So Ronel Dragon obviously was a main character during Saving Private Bunyan. He and Rickard Mix found the sewer people within the mists on their search for the ancient evil. When they found them, Ronel Dragon was already beginning to go mad with power and revenge. After convincing the sewer people to join his cause, they started an apocalypse cult, which their main goal, of course, is to bring about an apocalypse and the end of the world. Now, with that being said, obviously Ronel Dragon actually gets killed by Rickard Mix at the end of the story, and Rickard Mix gets executed for treason. Now, with all of that, after all of that has happened, the cult survived. They eventually spread all across the planet of Tyria, and they're waiting in the shadows for the return of Ronel Dragon himself to bring about what they are calling the Dragon Tide. Alright, let's move on to the next level. Alright, we have Lindenrow on this next level. He is kind of side-eyeing the camera, showing that things are really starting to get a little bit dicey down here. So first up, we have the Ancient Portuguese Dragon Conspiracy. Now, this is not as well-known lore in the general circles. You're seeing that these are starting to become more obscure as we're going down. Now, the Ancient Portuguese Dragon Conspiracy is a conspiracy that the Dragon family, yes, and I am talking about the same dragon as Ronel Dragon. The Dragon family actually are the monarchs, the kings and queens of Portugal. Now, this all started during the events of the true history of the conquest of Brazil, when Brazil was an international superpower in the 13 and 1400s. After the events of that story, the dragons become the regents of Portugal and are home to ancient knowledge of Brazil. Now, we don't know exactly where this is leading, but I'm sure that the authors have something really cool planned for the future. Up next, we have the Last Egg of Babylon. During the events of Prince of Flames, we have Amir Asa and Omar finding the Last Egg of Babylon. And you might be asking, what is the Last Egg of Babylon? Well, there's a race called the Babylonians maybe. And they meet the keeper of the egg named Gorg. Now, Gorg actually ends up making them leave due to means of temporary insanity. During this, though, they actually end up breaking the egg, dooming that entire race to extinction. Up next, we have the half-Jube Japanese Emperor. During the events of the last Weeb, the last emperor of Japan actually spliced his DNA with Jube DNA in order to bring about a hopeful subjugation of the Jubes and to create an army of his own using their power. Now, Matt Valenroth and Kyle actually managed to stop him near the end of their adventure. Up next, we have the Void Ark. Now, I kind of hinted towards this when we were talking about the Void way back up here on level 3. But the Void Ark is actually the vessel in which that allows people to travel across the void into the other universes. We haven't quite seen the Void Ark in action yet, but I'm sure we will get there in an upcoming story, probably in the Aldernard region. That seems to be where it's currently located. Up next, we have the Grey Goo Mammoths. Now, a lot of people are familiar with the Ummuts, but what they don't realize is that they are only really able to gain sustenance by eating each other through cannibalism. Now, if you are consumed by an Ummoth and you're not an Ummoth, you're actually reduced to this gray goo, and it's an extremely painful, terrible way to die. Up next, we have the Orc Cloud Gibbons defending the solar system. Now, this is actually a major plot point in Fate of the Frogs when Marty and Francis actually encounter the Gibbons in the Orc Cloud. They are the protectors of the solar system, and unfortunately they are wiped out when the Canthons blow up the sun. This is probably one of the most pathos-filled sections in the entire story. Next we have Dinosaurs in Space. During the events of Valenroth Hunters, Lindenrow actually shoots a termagant into space. Now, assumed dead, they don't worry about it, but actually what happens is that termagant evolves into the dinosaurs seen in Halo Dinosaurs Evolved. They are the same species, just very, very far apart in terms of time. Next, we have the Song of Unmaking. Now, the Song of Unmaking is a lesser known ability within the universe. It's used primarily to unmake extremely powerful beings like the angels of Colin and Allah. It's theorized that the rap orchestra will actually end up utilizing the Song of Unmaking to take care of Obama at the end of Straight Outta Holbrack. It's also implied that Rand al'Thor Dragon actually used the Song of Unmaking himself to take out other angels. Now, lastly, we have the Gulf War is canon. Now, we have in the events of the last Weeb, one of the main characters is Kyle. Now, Kyle's actually the American sniper and was actually fought in the Gulf War. So the Gulf War in our real life actually happened in the Cabbage Saga as well. So let's go ahead and move on to the next level. Alright, next we have the Plastic Surgery Jube level. Now these things are getting really dark here. So on the Plastic Surgery Jube level, we're starting off with something heavy. Koss murdered his pregnant wife. So Koss, the best friend of Eisengriff and Lindenrow during the events of Chronicles of Poobadoo, actually ends up killing his pregnant wife, sending what we now know as the Orphan of Koss into purgatory. Now, the Orphan of Koss is the main orchestrator of the invasion of London by the fetuses, which we'll actually talk about now, since it's a perfect segue. Now, London actually is destroyed by time-traveling fetuses. They utilize the nature of purgatory, of it being a place outside of time and space, to invade Victorian-era England, which Spookmaster then sends Eisengriff and Lindenrow to take care of during the events of Unborn. We have the Infinity Jube. Now, the Infinity Jube has been mentioned in two major sections of the story. The first appearance, or mention rather, and it was an appearance as well, is during the events of Prince of Flame, when Amir is on his hippie drug trip. He actually sees the Infinity Jube and is almost driven mad. The second appearance is during the Fate of the Frogs, when Marty and Frank fight the Harbinger of the Infinity Jube. The Gibbons unfortunately are there to help them, and they're able to drive it off, but it essentially confirms that someday the Infinity Jube will wreak havoc on the universe. Next up we have Jube Ass. This one is pretty dark. I'll go ahead and throw an image up here, but I will censor that for you guys, because honestly you don't really want to see it. Jubes do have an ass. Someone modeled that, and honestly I don't know why, but it is a thing. So next we have the music contest. So the music contest is effectively the genesis of the entire series. Eisengriff and Lindenrow got into a music contest. I'm not going to speak to one side or the other. It's a heavily debated topic within the community, but all you need to know is that some people think Eisengriff won, others think that Lindenrow won, and it's really kind of the genesis of the entire series. And I think, if my predictions are correct, that they're going to be actually diving into the lore of the music contest more during the Lord of the Rings series currently being published. Lastly, on this level, we have Steve Harvey joined the Taliban. And yes, I do mean Steve Harvey from Family Feud and as a TV personality. Now, during the events of the Jew and Muslim War, obviously, the timelines are going to differ. So instead of being on Family Feud, he actually ends up joining the Taliban in defense of Kabul. And he actually is a major player in that story, and it's not really well known, but it is the same Steve Harvey from TV. Alright, and let's go into the last section here. So it looks like we have Lyndon Rowe dancing, and Lyndon Rowe banged a
They continue talking about Stroller, the orcs, the refugees, and basically any other topic they can think of until finally their guide allows himself in and says, "The feast ish ready, my French." He leads them up to the great hall at the top of the hill, where the rest of the guests have already arrived. They take their seats near the head of the table, situated between Brigho himself on their left and a strange lump of hobbit flesh on their right. "Hello there," says Gilfarnan to the lump, trying hard to be polite. It makes a strange hissing, gurgling noise, and he quickly turns away to join the conversation the other two are having with Brigho. "So you just eat honey?" Baragond is saying. "I can't imagine that's healthy." "Honey," replies Brigho condescendingly. "Perish the thought, my dirt-blood friend. Here in Pureovo we use all parts of the bee to ensure there is no waste." "Ah, perfect. The first course is ready. Here, I will show you what I mean." The waiters bring 3 domes platters and set them in front of the guests. At Brigho's cue, they remove the domes with a flourish, revealing on each platter a single bee leg covered with yellowish dust and a few artful dribbles of honey. "Leg of bee with honey and ground hive," declares Brigho proudly. "A delicacy." They stare at the platters, confounded by this strange dish. Baragond, having the greatest familiarity with bees, is the first to recover. He gingerly picks up the leg with his fork and puts it in his mouth. For a few seconds, the others just stare at him as he sits there chewing on the bee leg. "That," he says slowly after finally swallowing, "was amazing. My people have never even considered eating the bee legs. We just use honey." "Yes, well, we pure bodies have perfected many things," says Brigho smugly. Meneldir and Gilfarnan continue staring at their platters, unable to bring themselves to eat the leg of an actual insect. "You gonna eat those?" asks Baragond greedily. "You can have it," says Gilfarnan with distaste. Meneldir nods in agreement. "You know I had my doubts about you guys," says Baragond between bites. "I'm still having them," mutters Gilfarnan. "But you know you're all right. You pure bodies and my people actually have a lot in common. We both like bees. We're both all related. We don't really do incest, though." Brigho says nothing, simply giving Baragond a condescending smile as more dishes are brought out one after the other. Among the many bee-based foods Baragond consumes that night are biatui, a single bee wing placed atop a hexagonal chunk of hive, and bee veal, cooked bee larvae. He also drinks quite a bit of mead. He notices one of the nearby hobbits hasn't even touched his bee veal, so he asks it if he can take it. The hobbit offers no response. "Oh, that one's dead," says Brigho offhandedly. "Looks like a heart attack. Damn, 3rd one this week." He snaps his fingers and some attendants come by to drag the corpse away. While everyone is distracted, Baragond surreptitiously scrapes the bee veal onto his own plate. "Mr. Purebody," says Gilfarnan, passing more food to Baragond. "These orcs that attacked today, we think they're the same ones that attacked Mosswort a few days ago, and we think there might be more out there." Says Brigho. "Yes, I've been considering this all day, and I think the situation leaves me no choice. As powerful as we are, the orcs have a serious numbers advantage." Looking around at the vast and prolific horde of pure bodies, Gilfarnan secretly doubts that this is the case, but he figures it's better to let the man have his excuses if it gets him to help out. "I will agree to an alliance with Mosswort until the orcs are dealt with once and for all," says Brigho haughtily. "But that is it. This changes nothing in the long term." "Fine by me," says Gilfarnan. The feast winds down, and eventually they find their guide and return to their quarters. "All right," says Meneldir, gathering his bow from his pack. "I'm going out hunting." "What for?" asks Baragond. "We just had a huge feast." "A feast of bees, Baragond," says Gilfarnan. "Insects. I gave all my food to you. I'm starving." Meneldir heads out. A few hours later, by which time Gilfarnan's stomach is rumbling dangerously, he returns looking crestfallen, with only a burlap sack in his hands. He slams it down on the table, allowing its contents to spill out. "Nothing but bees for miles," he says dejectedly. Gilfarnan puts his head in his hands and cries.
"Greetings. Dwarves must fight for dwarves. I'll not be ignored. It is hoped that Balin's company discovered Mithril. I do not ask much of you. Will you let me speak my piece?
At your service, and your families.
Stay and hear me out.
Stay and have some tea.
Oh!
Hey do, Mary do, my hearty.
Lindenrow banged a cat.